The investigation may have been scaled down, but the desire and determination to find who killed Alice and Edna remains as strong as ever within the force, and the people of Birmingham need to know. On the eve of Christmas, December the 23rd, 1987, police officers entered a corner shop in Spark Hill and made a grisly discovery. There, the elderly shop owners, Alice, aged 87, and Edna, aged 77, lay dead. They'd been murdered, brutally murdered. Alice had been strangled, what's thought with a towel or a scarf. Edna had been smothered and lay on the bed. What they discovered began a huge manhunt that to this day has never come to a conclusion. It remains probably Birmingham's biggest murder mystery.
There are a number of senior investigating officers that dealt with similar crimes, but I don't think any of them were faced with such challenges as what this particular case presented.
What was thought to be a mere burglary that went wrong soon seemed to apparent that it was something else. What do we know of the women? Alice and Edna Rowley were well loved. They were charitable. They were devoted to each other. Yet they were killed in the most brutal fashion. They were also trusting, and that may have been their downfall.
Did the ladies or his victims allow him inside because they knew him and trusted him? Because these two ladies, again, from what I remember, were very security conscious. They'd dealt with suspicious people in the past, kicked them out of the shop and what have you. So they weren't two, infirm ladies who were incapable of looking after themselves.
Taken from that shop, a bottle of Tia Maria, 2 boxes of chocolates, and a radio cassette player. Now that does seem very odd.
What I can recall is that it was initially thought that the motive was theft because there were 1 or 2 small items stolen or found to be missing from the shop where they were murdered. And that was, to myself, there was a danger of that being a red herring. The reason I say that is the murders themselves were fairly frenzied. I recall the cause was asphyxiation, where they were both strangled. And I think one of them had been badly beaten about the face and head. Now, if that's the case, it seemed unlikely that an individual would go to all of that horrific violence to steal 1 or 2 minor objects from a shop.
The till of that shop would have been overflowing with cash. It was not touched. That was a puzzle for detectives on the case. The crime scene had been scrubbed of forensics. There's no bloodstains. There's no footprints. The murder weapon was not there. There was 1 scrap of forensics. Officers found an empty crisp packet on the stairs leading to the shop to the living quarters above. That crisp packet was not from a brand sold at the store, and it is believed and still believed that was dropped by the person responsible for their deaths.
Domestics seemed to come flying up at me as an individual. In other words, the killer was known to the victim. The reasons for that was because they couldn't find any ingress or egress. There was no forced entry. From what I could remember, the back door remained locked with, I believe, the key still inside the door. And the front door was secure. When officers first went there, having received a call from local neighbours that they hadn't seen the old ladies for a day or two, they had to force entry to get in. So that was unusual. How did he get in?
I believe they knew their killer. They opened a door to a man while their meal was ready on the table. There were no signs of a struggle. The first thought was this was a break-in. A youth, perhaps high on drugs, had panicked and turned the crime into something more significant. But as I've said, the scene didn't give weight to that theory. Someone went to great pains to cover their tracks. Police threw everything at this investigation. They threw everything. It was one of the biggest manhunts that this city has ever seen. 100 police officers were drafted in to find the killer. 1,600 statements were made.
With a major... if I'd have took the Rowleys over, let's put it this way, I wouldn't have had it so wide. I'd have kept it tight. And the reason being is because the smaller an investigation is, whether it's a murder, a robbery, a rape or whatever, the smaller it is, the easier it is to manage. And you find that your management team can be more effective.
5,000 lines of inquiry were followed. Still, no clear evidence, no clear lead came up. They thought they had a breakthrough. Door-to-door inquiries revealed that a man described as a vagrant had been seen knocking on the door of the corner shop at around 7:30 on December the 22nd, when they believed the murder took place. The man was described as shabbily dressed, in a brown or grey coat, with greasy black, grey-streaked hair. This was significant. Officers trawled hostels, they went to shelters, they combed areas where they knew that down and outs, for want of a better word, congregated in Birmingham. Still, they didn't find the man. Now, my opinion, and it's only my opinion, is that that sighting, that individual seen banging frantically on the door of the shop, was not as significant as police thought. Let's be honest, it's not an uncommon sight in Birmingham city centre on any given day. Yeah? Yet they provided an identikit of the man to newspapers. His image was displayed on posters. Still, they reached a dead end.
Now, if we brought the Rowley scene up to today, then what we would see is forensic scientists or scenes of crime officers actually searching for DNA from all kinds of human organics, etc., etc. Camera footage, as it is with all investigations, camera footage is examined minutely, and I strongly suspect that if it was investigated today, we would see a totally different outcome.
So what do we have? Who could have done this? We know that Edna and Alice were brave. There were no signs of a struggle. Meticulous attempts were made to clear the crime scene of any evidence. The weapon has never been found. Senior detectives called on who was responsible to come forward. They played on his conscience, yet nothing happened. In a comment at the time, Detective Superintendent Mick Foster said, "This was a heinous and cowardly crime." It certainly was. He added, "Alice and Edna were kindly old ladies who were loved in the community. We owe it to the people of Birmingham to catch their killer." That killer has never come forward, and he may still walk these streets.
You couldn't fault the lack of enthusiasm and determination by those involved, certainly from the senior investigating officer, who stayed with it a long, long time before all the avenues of inquiry were exhausted. Now, when something like this happens and remains undetected, there's nothing more frustrating or disappointing to a detective than having that result. Now, albeit it remains on the file, it's never actually closed, and that's true, it's not, because it's reviewed from time to time and it's looked at historically in the future. But that doesn't take away the initial disappointment.
From time to time, police continue to reappeal over this terrible, terrible case. They hope that someone will come forward, someone will finally own up, or someone will say that they know who was responsible. The case continues to baffle detectives. Reappeals are still made. Only 2 months ago, Detective Inspector Jim Church from West Midland Police Homicide Review Team stressed that the search for the killer is ongoing. He said, "It is now 36 years since the brutal murder of Alice and Edna Rowley, with their bodies being discovered on a day so near to Christmas in 1987. There is a possibility that the person who committed the murders may still be alive. They may feel that it is time to come forward and talk about what they did and why. There was a very determined effort to catch those responsible. That determination hasn't diminished. Over the years, the case has been reviewed many times. Any new evidence from the public will be thoroughly investigated. Someone knows who did this. Someone shielded the killer. It is time for them to step forward."